First thing I'd like to do is show you how to replace a pad on a clarinet. It's fairly simple. We just have to remember to keep track of the screws that we take out and where to replace them. Don't be afraid of taking apart an instrument. I think that's the fear that most people have. So I think I'll replace this pad right in here, since it's pretty easy to get to. It's attached to these posts right in here. There should be a rod in between. So we're going to unscrew this rod right in here and detach this key, replace the pad, and then place it back where it should be. So we have various size screwdrivers. Each screwdriver that we have has a different size head. You see the large head for this long screwdriver here. You see a smaller head for this screwdriver right in here. This screw requires even something a little bit smaller, so we're going to use these small screwdrivers. We use these long screwdrivers with the long shaft so that we can get into places like saxophones where it requires a longer distance. We also have a swivel back so we can turn the screwdriver and we have some place to balance, and it just makes it a lot easier. So we're going to use one of these smaller screwdrivers and remove this rod in here. So we start right here. I think I'll switch glasses so I can see a little bit better. It's a fairly simple process. This particular key has a rod. Some of the other keys have pivot screws. Okay, you'll see the rod here in a second once I pull it out of the post here. Okay, now this tool is a very important tool to have. It's a duck-bill plier. This is a duck-bill plier, and what we don't want to do is scratch the rod that we're pulling out. So we pull it out a little bit at a time, just to make sure that we don't damage anything. And this rod holds two pads and two keys. Okay, so this is a spring pulling tool. It's originally a crochet tool, and you can see one end you can pull the spring out of the way in order to get the key off. Also, we use the back side of the tool to push the spring, and we sometimes have to bend the spring. We'll show you how to replace the spring a little bit later. So this tool is another important tool to have in your toolbox. So we're removing this pad, and also get the spring out of the way, and remove this pad as well. Okay. Now, in your toolbox, you might want to have this alcohol lantern. It's the safest way to have something in your office that you don't have to worry about. We'll just fill it about half full of alcohol. You have a wick, you light it with a cigarette lighter, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. But we will use propane for this particular project. So we'll put the alcohol lantern here, and I like using the propane because I use it for other projects as well. So we don't need much of a flame. Okay, that's way too much flame for what we're doing right now. So I back it off to just get a slight flame. That's all we need, just some heat, in order to melt the glue that is on the back side of this pad. So I use a needle point. Okay, this is actually a spring that we fashioned into a little piece of wood to be able to handle it a little bit better. So I'm going to remove the old pad, and there isn't anything wrong with this pad. It shows a little bit of discoloration, but that just comes with use. So what we're doing is we're melting the back side of this, which is shellac. I'll show you what that is in a second. We try to distribute the heat evenly across the back side of the pad or the key. Okay, so we remove the pad, has shellac on the back side of the pad, okay, and we still have a little bit of shellac on the back side of the key that we'll remove. Do it one of two ways. You can take your screwdriver and just kind of scrape it out. If it's the harder shellac, it should scrape out pretty easily. Okay, should be a problem. Okay, I'm going to reach back here and grab my cloth. I'm going to go ahead and clean this really well. I'm going to heat it again and melt the shellac that's back there. Place it on my towel and clean it off real well. Nice and clean. We want clean surfaces when we're working with this. So the next thing we need to do is find a pad that is the same size as this one. Couple of ways of doing this. We take measurements. This is a caliper, okay? And we can measure the inside diameter of the cup, okay? That's kind of a scientific way of doing it. Then you find the size pad that you need and replace the pad. Well, we might not have a caliper, so we just go to our collection of pads. These are all clarinet pads. You can see the base clarinet pads in here. And try to find the same size pad. And what we're looking for is the bottom diameter. There's some deep cupped pads and some shallow cupped pads. And we're looking for a medium size pad, but it has to be the same diameter. This is probably just a little bit large. Let me go over here and see if I find one that's the same size. Let's try this one. Okay, that fits perfectly inside the cup. Actually, this is a little bit tight. Let me go to another size. Okay, this does fit. What we want to do is have it not fit tight, but fit a little bit loose, because what we're going to do is add some shellac to the back of the pad and float this pad. One thing that's very important about the pads is that you have to make a vent hole. And again, you can use this with you can do this using a safety pin. Just make a couple of vent holes on the pad to let air out. The pad is made of cotton, okay? The outside of the pad is fish skin. And when you apply heat to any bladder, okay, it'll expand. And if you don't have a vent hole, this bladder will expand and pop. All right. So we're taking a little bit of shellac. Again, your shellac should come in your toolkit.
Right by your glasses.
It's right here. This is the shellac. This is a hard shellac. This is a softer shellac. We're going to use a soft shellac. It just floats easier. And we're going to heat our pad a little. We're going to heat the shellac. And you can see it catch fire. We don't want a whole lot of shellac on the pad. Too much will cause it to ooze out of the sides of the pad. Okay, so we're going to take our little pin here so we won't burn ourselves. We're going to heat the pad again. And if you do a close-up for me, I'm going to go down here. Now place the pad on the shellac, and it floats really nicely on there. Okay? Now for any other key, say these keys up here, it'd be easy to place the key back on the clarinet and seat the pad right then. But this pad goes back in the place where we have to attach the springs and such, and it'll take a little bit longer to seat, but I'll show you how to reseat this pad. Okay? Be very careful because we can burn ourselves. This can get pretty hot. Okay, we're going to replace the key. Take the other key. You do have to replace that as well to make sure that we get an even seating. And take the rod, place it back in through the keys and through the posts and tighten. And we don't want these too tight, ever too tight. Okay, so this is the key that we replaced the pad. Okay, now as I said before, the pad floats. Okay, and what we want to do is make sure that it's covering the key evenly. All right, so what we're going to do is this is a heat shield. Okay, we also use it to bend keys, okay, but we're just going to use it as a heat shield now. This particular clarinet is made out of a resin, a plastic, okay, will melt very easily. Good clarinets are made out of granadilla wood, and you do not want to burn the clarinet, but we are going to use a little bit of heat. Let's get the torch back in here. And we're going to heat the back side of the pad, okay? And we do this at an angle, okay? And you have to be very careful not to burn the pad. We don't even want to have the flame near the pad. What I'm just doing is making sure that the back side of the pad is getting even heat, keeping the flame away from the clarinet itself. Yeah, I used a soft shellac, so it should be melted by now. Take this off. I use my cloth to apply some pressure because this again is warm. It's actually hot and not just warm. Get this out of the way here. And apply some pressure on it. Okay. Then we take another little tool that we've made here. This is nothing but a matchstick, and we've attached some audio tape to it. This is just tape off of a cassette tape. We also use cigarette paper, a strip of cigarette paper that we can use as a feeler. What we want to do with the feeler is we place it underneath the key and make sure that the key is seated all the way around. The way that we do this, place the feeler underneath the key, apply a little pressure, and pull, and you can see that there's some resistance there. Turn it around, pull to this side, resistance there, pull to this side, resistance there, pull to the back side, resistance there, pull to this side, resistance there. Okay, so we're showing that the pad has evenly seated all the way around the tone hole. If it had not seated on one side, we need to make sure that we again melt the back side of the glue or the adhesive, the shellac, and let it float in place. It's pretty easy to do. Okay, so this pad has good pressure on it. Now we're going to remove the rod from here. And we're going to reattach the spring. Again, it's very important to use the right size screwdriver. Flat nose pliers, I think they call them duck-billed pliers. Bring it out a little at a time. Don't try to pull it out all at once because you'll have a tendency to bend it if you do. A little at a time. Remove this. Remove the keys. Okay. One thing that I didn't show you to do earlier is when we have this detached, it's a good idea to clean out the tone hole. You do this again before you place the pad. It's a good idea to clean out the tone hole. Okay, there's some residue right in here that we can clean out. Okay, clean the body of the clarinet. It's also important we have some pipe cleaners here. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit of oil to the pipe cleaner, and I'm going to clean the inside of the posts. It'll lubricate it and clean the inside of the posts. Also the inside of the key. Go right through there. Lubricate that as well. Okay, we're ready to attach the key again, and you can see that the springs are placed down here. Okay, you can see the direction in which the springs are bent. What you want to do is, depending on the key, some keys you want to keep closed. Most of these keys are kept open until you depress. This, for example, is bent in the opposite direction, so we want it bent to where the key is kept closed. Just keep an eye on what direction you want those keys to be in. I'm going to place this back in here. Okay, probably very difficult to see. I can barely see it myself, but we take this spring hook and we'll pull back on the key and place the spring in place. Okay, let's oil the rod just a tad. back in place. And we want to just take that to a point where it starts to enter the second post. And it was too far. Back that up just a tad. But this is attached, okay? And we take the second key. You can see in there, you can see the spring and the post which the spring goes around. Pull back on the spring. And you push the post all the way through. Okay, that should be back to where it should be. Okay, if you'd widen the angle here for a second, I'm going to turn this off. There's a test that you can run with the clarinets or any instrument. It's just a pressure test. I'm going to actually a vacuum test. I'm going to suck on this. So you get a pop, blow, and pop. You'll know the pad is seated, okay? There's one more thing that we need to do with a little bit larger pipe cleaner. I'm going to wet it. Okay. And I'm going to go back here. This tool you should also have in your toolbox. What it is, it basically holds down the pad. And what we want to do, if you have time, now some of these repairs that we're doing are quick repairs. So, you know, before a concert, a kid comes to you and tells you your pad falls off. What we want to do here is we wet the bottom end of the pad. We don't want to soak it, but we want to wet it. Okay. And we take this tool, which basically holds down the pad, this is for clarinet, and we let it set overnight.